All right, welcome to Long Island Catholic Apologetics. Is the apologetics ministry located on Long Island, New York, and today I'm actually broadcasting from the Starfish Coffee House, which is the heart of the ministry where everything began. I have a great pleasure to have Father Michael with me today, and this is going to be fascinating talk. I'm already fascinated by the mix of chores and tasks and assignments that you have on your shoulders. And so I know, Father, from the course, we both study at the Divine Mercy University, and we're taking right now the course on the leadership. And we had to do this presentation, short 1 minute presentation about our skills referring to the leadership. And you struck me as a leader right away when I watched your video, like very charismatic and confident. And I was like, I want to have an interview with this man. So welcome, Father Michael. Hello.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it and just glad to be with you. I'm excited about your ministry and what you do out there on the East Coast. And for all of your viewers and listeners, just happy to be with you today.
Super, super. So one of the things that I was like really interested into, because your assignment is not a very typical assignment for a priest. You work in the military setting. Can you tell us a little bit about it, like what that is, what that means, and where are you? Where are you located? All this stuff.
Sure. So I'm definitely a little bit unique in that. So not only am I a military chaplain, I'm also a pastor as well. So oftentimes, Catholic priests, if you are a military chaplain, you only do the military. Or if you are in the Guard, such as me, you only do this part time. I actually do both full time. So I'm a pastor of two small parishes in Nebraska, kind of out in the countryside. I love it. We small towns. It's wonderful, kind of rural areas. And then I'm also the military chaplain, the full-time chaplain with the Nebraska Air National Guard. So it's the Air Force in Lincoln, Nebraska. So we have a refueling base there. So I go to Lincoln every day, and I work on base and I fulfill my chaplain duties, and then I also come home and I have daily mass and take care of the parishes as well. So I kind of wear both hats in that way.
Wow, wow. So you're definitely busy man. So I'm very interested, like how does one become a chaplain in the base, military base? Did you have to take the military training? Do you have a rank actually in the army?
Yep. So our military is unique from other militaries. The chaplain corps actually predates the military. Even during the time of the Revolutionary War, there were chaplains who would serve in the militia and take care of the military members. And so I am officially in the military. Currently, I am a captain. I'll be up for major this next year. Well, the way it works in the military is we have chaplains of lots of different religious denominations. We have Protestant chaplains, we have a few rabbis, a few imams, and then Catholic priests. Catholic priests are very much needed in the military. The Catholics are the highest percentage that serve in the military. We have the highest demographic. And we actually have the biggest shortfall of chaplains. So they're constantly looking for priests to serve in the military. So to be a chaplain, to be a priest in the military, obviously you have to be ordained first, and you have to spend a couple of years in your diocese working as a diocesan priest or a religious priest. And then you seek what's called endorsement. So just like I belong to the Diocese of Lincoln here with Bishop Conley, I had to apply to the Archdiocese of the military. And so I go through an interview process, and we talked with the Archbishop and just some of his how it all works there. So you go through the whole process, and then you enter into the military. So I went through my officer training, a kind of a basic officer school training, and then we have chaplain training. Then we also do professional development. Actually, just in a couple of weeks, I got to go back down to Alabama for another week of training for my own professional development as a chaplain. Now, chaplains are unique. We are non-combatant. So we actually don't carry any weapons. We are not allowed to carry any weapons according to the Geneva Convention. So when when we are deployed, we don't get to hold a weapon, even if we're in a dangerous zone. We have we have specialists who go with us who carry weapons. And it's actually unique because actually in some other countries, the Czech Republic, I did a trip to the Czech Republic, and their chaplains exist first as military members and second as chaplains. So a Catholic priest joins the military because he wants to take care of the Catholics. But I met one of their priests who's actually a special operations. So he is a
Oh,
special
wow.
forces, and then he's also a priest. And so that's the way. It's just different in some countries how the chaplains exist. But here in America, this is the way we exist. It's very fascinating. A lot of the guidelines and the structures for the entire chaplain corps very much imitate what we see in for a Catholic priest, such as in the confessional. You know, when people go to confession, we can't reveal any of that. Well, the chaplains have 100% confidentiality. So anytime a military member speaks to me, I can't reveal that. I'm also a non-reporter, so they can speak to me about anything, and I am not allowed to report that. And it gives them that ability to kind of process and talk through what's going on. So that's kind of the structure of how we function in the military.
That's interesting. So, uh, well, I'm just gonna go kind of like spontaneously, like because I kind of follow your thought process, and the thing that you mentioned, that you have this confidentiality and then they trust you. I
Mhm.
see like how important might be the training in psychology that you're receiving right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Because
very much so. I've been a priest for 11 years and have a lot of experience with pastoral counseling and confessions and spiritual direction. But as what we see in the military more and more, which is kind of what you see in the country, there's this decline in spirituality. And so while my primary focus is definitely for Catholics, I'm a chaplain for all military members. And so I need to be able to speak and help people of different faith traditions, or people who are
mm,
atheist or agnostic or Eastern tradition, whatever it may be. So that's why I actually started the program for psychology. One, I have a passion for it. I like to see the combination of both spirituality and psychology working together. But to be able to have another tool set to help people who may not speak the same language of spirituality.
right. And does that happen? Do they approach you like the members of other faiths?
They do. Um, I'm very grateful for it. I will tell you, I have seen and spoken with a lot of good intention, well-meaning chaplains of other faith traditions. I am so grateful as a Catholic to have the philosophy that we do, the theology that we do. It's so comprehensive from the view of the whole human person, that we can speak to a lot of wounds on a natural level that I see other traditions have a hard time. I think a lot of Protestant chaplains struggle with counseling because in their faith tradition, their solution is we'll just pray more, and that's good. You know, we always, prayer is a good thing. I'm not
Right, right.
criticizing that, but sometimes just more prayer isn't what the person needs. They need some counseling. They need some working through the wounds. They need to understand how does
Mm,
their suffering fit into this. And
mm,
if your only response is, well, you just need to pray more, you just need more faith, that actually hurts people more. That makes them doubt their faith. That makes them doubt what they're going through. And so I'm grateful for the tradition that we have. And as in any case, as people start to get to know you and have more conversations, I've seen a lot of people of a very wide variety come and talk and work through some things. My favorite story, and this is one of the things I love about being a priest in the military. I really do.
mhm.
I had one day I had two people stop by my office, and it was a female and a male, and the female said to the male, "This is the chaplain I told you need to talk to. He's really good to talk to." And I said, "Do you want to talk?" He said, "Yeah." She said, I can talk to you. I said, sure, you're more than welcome to come in. He said, well, I'll come in later. I said, okay. Well, the male was an active Buddhist, and the
Mhm.
female was a New Age lesbian white witch, telling
Wow,
the
that's a
Buddhist to
mix.
speak to a Catholic priest. So, I mean, where else does that happen, right? Like that I it's such a unique situation, unique
Mm,
opportunity to be able to evangelize and preach the gospel on a natural level, and to help people heal through their wounds,
right.
and meet them where they are. So
That's really interesting. And also, like for me, it kind of hits home because my ministry it's mostly apologetics. So we need to have this dialogue with other faiths to refer to the things that are common to us, and then approach the differences in that delicate way, and then you have it right there in
yeah.
practice. So, what I was gonna ask you is, well, you mentioned there was like female and male, but what's the most demographic? It's mostly male, right? Because
Primarily male, a
yes,
significantly higher percentage of male to female.
how would that be? Like 90% is guys, and then
Uh,
the
it's
women,
it's it's starting to shift a little bit, but I would argue it's probably around 75 to 80% male, 25 to
right?
20% female. And it also depends on the branch. So in the Army, you have a higher number of male to female. The Marines are significantly higher for male to female. Um, Navy and Air Force is probably a little bit more comparable.
Hmm.
The Space Force, I think there tends to be, well, you know what? I don't have enough experience of the Space Force to be able to speak accurately to that. I think it's a little bit more even,
Hmm.
primarily because of the different roles that each branch plays. Army again tends to be a lot more physical. There's a lot more grunt work, things like that. Space Force tends to be a lot more intellectual. They work in the cyber world, so it just kind of plays on the strengths and weaknesses that each gender brings to the table. So, and the
Sure,
complementarity.
sure. So because of that, uh, I think that that would be the whole thing about the church in general, but specifically for you and your ministry, you need to address the needs of men in very particular. When another thing that I'm very much into is the ministry dedicated to men. It's I feel like there's not enough ministers and not enough focus on men's needs. Like it's just in general, like society as large doesn't really care much about the feelings and
Yeah.
emotions and experiences of men. But you need to address a lot of things, and that's a challenge in itself. So,
Hmm.
but also like from your introduction in our course that you had this video, I noticed like you're very like man's man, like you go hunting, you do all this stuff, I was like, oh, this guy's fun to be around. So I think you can have a lot of things that other guys might feel like relate to, be attracted to, and like okay, that's the guy I can say some stuff, I feel like
Yeah.
this is somebody I can trust. And I think in the Roman Catholic Church, a lot of times there's so much attention to the needs of women, and actually women are primarily who come to the church to mass. You can see it, like just look around, there's like
Yeah.
mostly women, some kids, and some older people, not so much men. And my thought was like maybe because there's not enough pastoral care directed to men.
Mm.
Maybe what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into that. I 100% agree. We have a masculine crisis in our country in general, and we have a masculine crisis in the church. I think it's less than, I think it's 15% of men, Catholic men, think daily prayer is worthwhile. That number is shocking.
Say
I
that again.
also
Say that one more time. Like
I think it's right around, it's less or right around 15% of Catholic men think prayer is worthwhile.
hmm.
Right now, the last study that I saw is that if the mother is the spiritual head of the family, around 35 to 40% of the kids grow up to be active in their faith. If the father is the spiritual head of the family, 95% of the kids grow up to be active in their faith.
Powerful.
So just unbelievable numbers there. But we have a true masculine crisis. We have a society that is trying to feminize boys. We have a society that is trying to take away the reality of gender, the complementarity of gender, authentic femininity and authentic masculinity. It drove me nuts a few years ago when everybody was on the kick of, oh, toxic masculinity. You use that phrase,
Right.
kind of a man's
Right.
man. uh, For your listeners, what I said in my introduction, I love to hunt. I love to ride my horse. I've got a dog who's sleeping on the floor right now. But I do triathlons and I do fishing, and I also do water sports and skiing. But I also love to read. I love to do lots of things on the intellectual life, to be kind of a well-rounded individual. And there's this negative persona of authentic masculinity that has infiltrated, I think, throughout the wholeness of our country, which then impacts the way ministry is done in the church.
Yes. I
And
actually noticed, I'm sorry for interrupting you, that
no, go ahead.
what I miss a lot is I don't know why is that, but I saw there's like for a long time there's a lot of like feminine priests actually, and whenever I encounter like masculine priests, I'm so drawn to that, that like somebody speaks with power, with
Yeah,
the force of the word of God, we need that, because that's powerful message.
yeah, it
And
needs to
you,
be
you
the
need, I feel like you need the masculine energy to kind
yeah,
of deliver that message.
yeah. We my diocese has been criticized. We tend to be either loved or hated by Catholics around the country. We're very, very blessed in my diocese. My dog is pushing in. She likes to be at center of attention. I have a big chocolate lab. And we are known for kind of our orthodoxy. People call us conservative. We're orthodox. We follow what the church teaches. We are the only diocese that only has male servers. We are the
Hmm,
only diocese that uses male acolytes to distribute communion. Um,
interesting.
and I firmly believe that has led to the reason why we're as far as number of seminarians to Catholics, we're the number one diocese in the country for that. We have the most seminarians per
Wow. Can you
Catholics.
can you remind everybody what diocese you're in?
Yeah, I'm in the Diocese of Lincoln, Nebraska. And our priests, we're so blessed with priests. We have 150 priests for 96,000 Catholics. So
Wow. And those
100,
are local priests, like American
they're,
priests.
almost primarily, exclusively American priests. We have a few who come
Wow.
in to do mission
Wow.
work, and our average age of priest is 44 or 46. So
Interesting. Just for
we,
the comparison, I just tell it like here, Long Island, New York, there are some local priests, but huge, huge, huge group of priests are, well, if there are American priests, those are usually like seniors by now. There's not many
right,
young ones. There's
right.
very few seminarians. So we have priests from Congo, from Nigeria, from Poland. I'm Polish from my background. A lot of Polish priests, and not so many local.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a terrible cycle, because what happens is the more you get into that, the less you have young local men who want to say, yeah, I want to be a part of that. It really creates this kind of bad cycle. Whereas when you have young priests, we have strong Catholic schools and strong parishes and strong family life, traditional family life, it becomes normal for young men to discern the priesthood. They move from serving every Sunday at Mass to, I need to go to the seminary to see if God's calling me to be the priest.
Hmm.
We ordain priests every single year, and our average age is around 26 to 28. That's the age of
Wow.
priests being ordained. And so and part of that is back to your point about masculinity, though, is when you see me, you're kind of seeing a lot of our priests. A lot of our priests are hunters, or a lot of our priests are just avid sports. We love to play baseball, and we grew up playing football, and just lots of different sports, lots of different activities, all of these things. A lot of farm kids. So when you have that structure already, it becomes easy for men to say, I want to be a part of that.
It is. It is. I was
Yeah.
actually very lucky. When I was in middle school, I had this fantastic priest, and he was always into like bike trips, hiking. He ran like a soccer team. It was
Yeah.
fantastic. It was a great guy. And those are just very little opportunities that you can preach. The kids
Yeah.
don't even know. They think we just have a hike, but meanwhile, you hear a few words of gospel here and there, and it
Yep.
sticks with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it becomes and this is I think part of the challenge for men in the church is those moments become the authentic lived gospel. Um, Women are naturally relational. It's easier for women to be religious. Men are naturally protectors and objective. And so when we give them roles to fulfill, and then your role is we're going out hiking, we're doing something objective, then I can preach the gospel in that. Whereas it's a lot harder to say, just come sit in adoration and grow in your relationship with the Lord. If you don't have that basis first,
Exactly.
it's a lot more challenging.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I actually found that I feel like men, yeah, just like you said, they need to do something. We need to have
Mhm.
a chore. Even though we complain a lot about the chores we
Yeah,
have to do, but we need to have
yeah,
a chore. And I feel like in the church there's not many chores for guys, like
yeah.
literally, like there's priest who does most of the thing during the mass. You just have to stand there and respond, and that's
Hmm.
it. There's men need to do something. So I feel
Yeah,
like getting them into some projects, like anything, like build the nativity scene, whatever. That's
yeah,
the project. That's a
yep,
project. They go and they're happy. They do it. They build strong fraternity, community within
yeah.
that task.
And that's why I argue, whenever people ask me about the question of our servers and our acolytes, it's not a condemnation of women. It's actually almost like criticism of men. If we When you allow women to do these, they'll do it. They'll immediately step in. They're way more generous in this aspect, and men are much more likely to step back. And you saw that after the Second Vatican Council, in those places where they allowed girls to serve, boys stopped serving. And if you look the correlation, then as that happened, the number of seminarians began to go down, and the same thing with Eucharistic ministers. And
Mm,
so, then you see men stop going to church. You see men stop participating as much. Whereas when we use acolytes, in fact, I can tell you last night I had a wonderful conversation with one of the men who he just talks about the growth in his faith of having, I forced him to be an acolyte. I wanted him to do this, and
mhm.
how much it has changed his life, and for the good for his family. When you give those types of opportunities that are exclusive to men, then men have to step up, and men will step up when you give them the opportunity. But if you make it optional and you make it, well, here's other people who can do it, they're just not going to.
Right, right. That's a very powerful message here. Yeah, wow. I'm actually totally on the board with what you're saying, and I think that's first of all, it's a great diagnosis of what's happening and great solution.
Mhm.
Uh, and I'm actually so happy to hear that there is a diocese that works. And your first of all, the just statistics just speak to the success of that strategy.
Mhm. Yeah, we're very blessed. I can tell you that in my parishes here, we're for mass attendance, we sit around 65% to 70% of my Catholics going to Sunday Mass.
Wow.
And that's in one parish. In my smaller parish, it's right around 85%. And you see people going as families. We have significantly higher numbers, and so when you create this culture of empowering and lifting up, but according to the authentic complementarity, and this is where our culture has in America has really impacted the church. This feminization of men, this gender confusion that's going on, it impacts this on every level. And so when you really embrace this, what is authentically to be a man, then men step into that.
Hmm.
But if there's no, well, you can be whatever you want, well then how can people ever thrive? How can you really be fulfilled if there's no level to achieve to?
Right, right. One of the criticism of the Protestant churches that I heard, and I actually totally agree with, they some of them they said that there is no requirements anymore. Everything is just God given grace and all that. And the
Mm.
second you lowered the bar, nobody tried to attempt to do anything more above it.
Yeah,
And basically it was like, if you don't have to do anything, at some point you're like, why do I even have to go to church? God loves me anyway, you know?
absolutely. Absolutely.
So I remember I read it. I don't remember where I read it, but I totally agreed with that. And that's so true. That's so true. And that's actually speaks to like a lot of like churches that are very orthodox in their theology, and they seem to attract people, and these people are very faithful, and not just on the like holidays every week.
Every week. Yeah.
It's really interesting. Like the higher the bar, the more you strive to get there.
Yeah. And even to your point about this it comes to the question of freedom. People seem to think freedom is the ability to do whatever I want. And in reality, the more I am bound to Christ, the more free I am. And the
Mm,
analogy I like to use is, think about a river. If you have a river with no banks, it just overflows, it floods into a plain, and it becomes an inch deep and dries out, and there's no life in it. But the
mhm.
rivers with strong banks, the really strong banks, are the rivers that flow the best and the strongest and the deepest and get the
Mm,
most life. So you have to have a bank in order to have a good river. If you don't have those, you just have a flood and that's it, and it dies out. And
right.
so when it comes to the question of religion and freedom and these things, if I have no boundaries, well, then I'm actually not free. I'm not flourishing. But when I have those boundaries, then I'm fully free. I am the most able to flourish because I am bound to the true and the good and the beautiful.
Right, right. Well, yes, I like this illustration, and that's true to children too. Like for example, if there are some parents that they think that the kids can do anything, most of the time these kids get to self-destructive
Yep.
activities, and
Yep.
it's really hard to fix it later on in life. But those kids that they know, like they have
Hmm.
some boundaries. We don't do this. We don't hurt other people. We don't hurt ourselves, and then we were respectful. You learn to navigate your life, and even though kids rebel against those rules, those kids flourish, those kids go to
Yep.
college, those kids get
Yep.
great jobs, those kids are committed to their dreams and their passions. So it just works. It's just so
Yeah.
observable.
They did an interesting study on playgrounds in elementary schools, and what they were checking to see, they wanted to see what's better for a playground, to have a fence or no fence. And what they discovered was that playgrounds that had no fence, children only used about like 60% of the playground. But if it had a fence, they used about 95% of the playground, because when
That's
they
cool.
knew what their boundaries were, they can fully enjoy it. But when they don't know their boundaries, they hold back and they can't really enjoy the fullness of what they have.
Right. Think the kind of like mystery of boundaries is like that safety. It gives you sense of
Yep.
safety, and
Absolutely.
it's not the most intuitive thing to come up with, but basically that's how it works.
Yeah.
You know that within this banks, like you said, that's where you feel safe,
Yep.
and that just works like that. I just want to ask you a few more questions about the well, first of all, I just love like all these psychological insights that we have here, and I like I didn't say that, but I like how you give like little educational background to where the chaplains came from in the army and all that was great in the military. So a little education part. But so you have military rank. Do you have to go to practices? Do you have to run with the soldiers? Do you have to
Yep.
do all this stuff?
Yep. We have to do all. I have to do all the PT. I just got back here, just got about 2 months ago here. I was on a 6-month deployment to the Middle East. And so when I was
Seriously?
there,
Wow.
yep, I was in Qatar. And so you would do PT with all the members, and I'd have to run and do lift weights and all of that. I did last week, and I was preaching. I will tell you, it's intimidating when you're working out in a gym and a Navy SEAL comes right next to you. You say, you know what, I'm gonna go that way instead. Those are beasts of men. But no, yeah, we do it all, and actually that's something I like to do, because to your point, it makes me more approachable. It makes I when I work out with the guys, then they'll have conversations with me in the gym that they won't have with me in other places. And so
Right, right. You just
and
hit
it's
different population that otherwise
different population.
they
Yep.
would never talk to a priest, probably.
Yep, it really true. And so that for me, and that's why I like to have lots of different passions and hobbies, because whatever they're interested in, if I can talk to them about what they're interested in, then we have a connection, and then I can start bringing about a change of heart. I was influenced early on by a quote by Saint John Bosco. He in working with kind of the boys who would run around in Spain, he would say this. He'd say, get them to love you and they'll follow you anywhere. And
Wow.
it's not about just the individual person, but it's finding that connection. If I can talk to them about something they're passionate about, well then they're going to be much more open to bringing me their issues and talking to me about what's going on in their life.
Mm. Yeah, that's really cool. And then do you get also training in using like the machines, equipment, trucks, pickups, other,
We
I don't even know how to name all
Yeah.
this.
In some aspects, yeah, like we'd be able to drive the Humvees and things like that. I have gone up. I don't fly the planes, but I do go up with them when they fly sometimes. And so when they refuel other planes up in the air, I've been with that, or I've gone up on some intelligence gathering flights and things like that. So in the Air Force, that's kind of our main focus. But so that's really neat to go up for those things. And but I also I do a video series with our base. If you're familiar with the micro dirty jobs, so he does dirty jobs around the country. On my base, I do the dirty jobs, and we kind of highlight the different things that people do. So I've changed rims on the tires of a plane, and I work on
Cool.
generators and things like that. So just to, again, kind of going into their workspace and what they do. Yeah, but we would basically, as chaplains, we can do all of that. The only thing we can't do is hold weapons. That's
Mhm.
our as a non-combatant, that's we are bound by that. However, interestingly, I will tell you that during the height of the war in Iraq, there was an army chaplain who was they were on a convoy, and they were ambushed, and so he was with the wounded, and there was an Iraqi coming with a suicide bomb, and
Wow.
he picked up a gun and shot him because the suicide bomb was going to kill all the wounded. And they gave him an award, a medal for that valor,
Mm.
because even though he's a non-combatant, he, in protecting the lives of this person, was not following the rules of war. He was not going to respect the wounded. So in that kind of very specific circumstance, even the chaplain there protected his men.
Right,
And
right, right. And especially that you have a leadership position, right? You're a captain.
yeah,
So a
yep.
captain means that you are in charge of a group of people, right? Does that
Well,
mean that?
normally it would. As a chaplain, I have no authority to give orders. I can't conduct the war. I can't say, all right, you guys go there, you guys go there.
Mm.
My rank is equivalent to what is expected of me. So as a captain, my focus is working with all of the members. As you get up in rank, you kind of start doing more advising to leadership or advising on policy and things like that. Now, because of my unique role, as I wear lots of different hats, I actually kind of do all of that, because I'm the only chaplain on my base during the week. So I will, every week I'm at a table with colonels and advise on different things going on. And I also work with the lowest rank of enlisted, so senior airmen. So I kind of hit
Yeah,
all the
it's
different
interesting.
ranks. So
Like I had like a big transformation in my thinking about the military personnel. I used to think those are just guys, like, oh, they probably didn't do well in school and they are just good physically, so they go to army. And then
yeah.
I regretted that thinking because especially now with all these conflicts and all that, I hear a lot of, military leaders, and hear so much wisdom coming from them. Those are men who are so responsible. Those are men who care about other people. It's not about violence. It's actually about protecting.
Hmm?
And I was like, wow, this, and I get so much inspiration from these people.
And if you think about it, it makes sense why the largest group is Catholic. We love our martyrs, we love our saints, we love people who put themselves on the line for others, who live to something higher, and that's what the military is. You have these people who are putting others, putting the country, putting others, their people, citizens, and such as more important than themselves. I mean, this willing to
Right.
sacrifice
And just
to live.
tough
Mhm.
lifestyle to perform every day. It's really difficult, especially in this like really soft society that we have right now, that everybody just chooses comfortable over difficult that leads somewhere. That's really something to be impressed about and admire, especially in these days.
Yeah, and to your point, there are some who use the military to get out. They escape whatever life they had growing up. But what's fascinating is, and sometimes in those cases, those people will say the military was their way out, but then the military became their way of life, and they stay, and it changes their entire life. It changes everything for them. And so there's a lot of very professional people, very intelligent people. And the way our even in education in the military, I was saying I'm going to be gone here in a few weeks. We have to continue to take classes and continue to take training, that we grow as individuals commensurate to what our level is. The expectation is you grow. It's not stagnant. You're always moving forward. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. And
Hmm.
so that sense of personal development is really important in the military.
Right. So I'm assuming like in your branch that might not be so prevalent, but I guess in the other branches the PTSD is a huge thing. But maybe it is in yours also. So and that is something that really a lot of men struggles with. And especially the guys who are in the army, they come back to the civil like service and they work in the normal jobs. A lot of times they get into drinking and other stuff, and society just doesn't know how to help them. Most of the time they just judge them, and really sad.
Yeah, it's heavier. It is definitely heavier in some of the more combat associated branches, Army, Marines. But it is definitely happens in all the branches. The Actually, what my thesis in for the program is on a topic. It's called a moral injury. It's kind of a subset of a PTSD. It's similar to PTSD, but it has the same, very similar symptoms, but it's on the moral side. It's the breaking of the moral code. And they're discovering more and more that a lot of the military, what they called PTSD, was actually moral injury. Um,
Interesting.
I did something bad, I saw something bad, or I didn't do what I thought I would do, essentially. And so what's happens in these situations is they don't know how to cope with it. And so to your point, they find these negative coping mechanisms, and PTSD is a real thing, and moral injury is a real thing. I think part of what's driving some of this also is, as I see younger generations coming in, there's very little resiliency. The next generations coming up, they're being raised by parents who do everything for them. I
Yes.
don't know if you know the term helicopter mom or a lawnmower parent.
Yes.
Any
Yes.
type of adversity, they push out of the way, and I see the results of it because they don't develop resiliency when they're younger. As they get older, when they get into some serious situations, they're told from day one, you can be whatever you want to be. Well, that's
Right.
actually not true. You're going to be able to do whatever you want to do. Well, that's not actually true.
Mm.
We want to encourage dreams. We want to encourage that, but there are some things that that's actually just not true. And so they get into the real world and discover, hey, you're not God's gift to creation. The world doesn't revolve around you. And the
Mm.
first set of struggles, they struggle with resiliency, which then can lead into PTSD, can lead into moral injury, because
Right.
they didn't develop that resiliency earlier on.
Yeah, that's a very good diagnosis, and that's also why I love our school, because it just pinpoints all these things so accurately.
Yeah.
And there was nothing that I disagreed so far. I was like, wow, so impressed with the school and the quality of teaching that they have there. And You know what's interesting? I just had the conversation about this helicopter parents, but this is interesting how the people are the product of their generation in a way. And I know some people don't like this statement, but these parents were when they were kids, those are the first generation that their parents were both working, and a lot of
Yeah.
times they when going back home to the empty home, they have all the freedom, they no boundaries, no banks, right?
Boundaries, yeah.
And they learn that it's not good for them, that they wish they had somebody who could care for them and all that,
Yep.
and that's why they become this helicopter parents.
Yep.
So it's really interesting, like how this like waves, back and
Yep.
forth.
Yeah, it all has an effect. It all impacts it. It's just fascinating, the totality of the human person, in all aspects of this. I love the phrase. It's almost as if God knew what he was doing, the importance of family and all of this aspect. When you start breaking these things down and you play with them, when you play with fire, you're going to get burnt. And I think as a culture, we're seeing that. And then you look at in the communities that are fatherless. Eh, they don't even study this in sociology anymore. The number one predictor for problem behavior is a fatherless family.
Mm,
Children are going to act out without a father figure. And yet now we have this promotion of, well, men aren't necessarily necessary, women aren't necessarily necessary. You can be either that you want. And then we're shocked that we're having problems in our culture. So originally, back to your original point of the problem of masculinity, we need a return of the authentic man, which brings out a fruitfulness in society that we are seeing the absence of.
right, right. Yes, yes, and I'm glad it coming from you because I feel like you might be a role model to many people, like by the things that you do and then the lifestyle that you have. So it's really great. I really wish for more masculine, charismatic priests because that's how I imagine Jesus to be like.
Mhm.
Really,
Yeah. I, I I can't imagine Jesus as a boring guy. He kept 12 apostles entertained for 3 years. They stuck around him. It's not like, yeah, we're just gonna follow this guy because he's saying some good thing. Like that, they enjoyed his company. That's the only explanation. So,
right.
yeah, it's there was something very dynamic to
But
it.
it's also attractive. Like in New York, there's like a lot of religious groups, they shrink and people don't find them interesting anymore. But in New York, there's this group of Friars of the Renewal. You heard about it, probably.
I have good friends in them. Actually, we have friars in our diocese given a retreat. Brother Innocent is from my diocese, and I know Brother Xavier, Brother František is from my diocese. They're a great religious order, good
Right. And
men.
they seems to be very masculine guys.
Yep.
And that, like, let's say we have seminars that they don't have a lot of men coming into, but their fraternities grow, they bloom
Yep.
and flourish. It's interesting.
Yeah.
But I remember I went on a hike, like maybe that was right before COVID started with Father Malachi. Like he was a brother back then. I didn't become father, and he just gathered this group of guys. I'm a pretty athletic guy. The ministry is just I do it out of my faith, but I work as a fitness trainer. I'm coach and
Oh
I
wow.
coach
Okay.
people. Yeah, so that's why I'm also attracted to all these things. But so I thought I'm an athletic guy. I'm gonna go. We're gonna get this hike, and we went to the Catskill Mountain, upstate New York. And this guy went on and on and on. And we went, he was like, we go on this like really difficult trial. And then he goes, it's too easy. Let's go off the trial. And we go through the woods, through the rivers and stuff. I was dying there. I was like recovering from this thing for a week after that. And I was like, he's just a religious brother, but he had this charisma and nobody held back. We all followed him. We all
Yeah.
followed him. And we came back so late at night. It was so dark. It was like really a long hike. I had never done a harder hike than this. And we were all that was such a experience that gave me energy for the rest of my year, really. and then we hike. It's sometimes tiring, so we don't speak anything, but every once in a while we strike a conversation, and it's always something about God. And then guys bring up their wounds, like you said, and he responds to that. And there were confessions. We had a mass on this beautiful
Yeah.
rock by the river, and surrounded by this beautiful nature, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. And that's amazing. That's just how that just opens up the masculine spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, guys need that. And I want to ask you for one more thing. So remember, in that introduction, you said like you believe everybody can be a leader,
Mhm.
and I find it like really, really important thing. Although it might not be so obvious to a lot of people. I don't even know if it's so obvious to me. So can you maybe expand on that?
Yeah, I think when we use the word leader, people automatically go to a position. They think about someone who is an authority. And that is an aspect. There are positional leaders. There are people. Sorry, this is my yes, this is my dog who wants some attention. Thank you. Um, um, but that's not really what leadership just is. Because you can have people who are in positions of authority who are really bad leaders. There's what's called the Peter's principle. You get promoted to a level of incompetency. So position doesn't necessarily mean leader. It means you have authority, you have a role. So when I say I believe all people are called to be leaders, what I mean by that is the not just a positional but an inspirational. And the example I use in the military, as I told you, so I have no authority. I can't command people. If you're familiar with Father Emil Capon, he is a priest from Wichita, Kansas. He died during Korea. He was a prisoner of war. He's a World War II veteran, Korean veteran. So he was a priest chaplain.
Hmm.
And his army unit was captured as they were on a death march. The officers were giving the enlisted orders. They had the authority, and the enlisted were ignoring them because they were just trying to stay alive. And so Father Capon, who doesn't have authority, would speak to them, and they would do whatever he asked. And he kept them going through when they were imprisoned. He kept them motivated, and he was the true leader. And he even led the officers. He would make the officers stand up every day and sing the national anthem so that the enlisted would not lose heart. And what you see there is this inspiration, this person who is leading others to something greater. And that's what I mean by all people are called to be a leader. So as people of faith, Jesus says, go therefore and baptize all the nations. Well, that's a leader. That's someone who is going out and inspiring, who's motivating, who's drawing other people to the truth of the gospel. And so our culture, we are, for the first time in Western civilization since Rome, we're post-Christian. It's no longer a Christian culture. So the need for evangelization is even greater. And so as Christians, we're not meant to sit back. We're actually meant to go forward. You think about the scripture passage, the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church, right? Then Jesus
Mhm.
says this to Peter. Well, if you think about that, the gates of hell does not mean that hell is attacking the church is attacking hell. So the gates of
Oh,
hell,
wow. I like that.
yeah, yeah, it's not passive. It's no, the church will attack this and the church will overcome their gates. The gates of hell will not prevail.
Oh, see,
That's
I
why,
had to hear that from the military man because I never,
right?
never,
Like,
never saw it this way.
uh-huh. And so I love Lord of the Rings. I'm kind of a big geek, to be honest. And
Oh,
so,
me too.
when they're going to Mordor, that's an image of the church, and Mordor is this image of hell. And so
Oh,
the
wow.
gates of Mordor fall because good triumphs over evil. And so for that to happen, it's not passive. It's not just to sit back and you just, God works with us. And so I think that's what I meant by all people are, especially all Christians are meant to be a leader. That we're meant to influence. We're not meant to just be passive in our life.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's deep. So it's basically leading to the greater good, If you find a
Mhm.
higher moral value, you can lead people towards this, guide them towards that. But it also
Yeah.
takes like you know, it indicates that you have to discern, that you have to grow to
Yep.
recognize the good. So
Mhm.
being a leader, it's a job in a way that you have to be
My
committed
my
to.
my dad used to say this all the time when I was growing up, and I was blessed with a wonderful father who really did a great job with formation. You know, the family is the first formation for us, and he would always say, before you can lead, you have to follow. And so, to your point, when you see somebody charismatic or you see an authentic man, you want to follow that, and then as you are formed in that model, you embrace it and you become the leader that you are following. So yeah, you have to, you can't just say, okay, well, now I'm going to go do all of this, because you might not be ready, you might not have the discernment, and there are times when you're not supposed to do that. There are times when you're supposed to sit back in that aspect of, let me receive first so that I can give, because you can't give what you don't have. So if you don't receive it, you don't have anything to give.
Mm. Wow, wow, that's really cool. I love it, and I think that's a great for the finale of our conversation. So Father, thank you so much for having time for this conversation. I think I definitely would want to talk to you about some other stuff. I already have few ideas because that's interesting. You have the interesting interplay of like this real world that sometimes is very nasty and brutal, and then the
Mhm.
worst whole situation that's probably one of the worst things that can ever happen to people. And then you have faith, and then the beautiful God who is all good and graceful. So the stuff like maybe we would talk about just war or something, because that's something to break up. Like you mentioned, for example, priest who had to kill in order to save
Mhm.
somebody. Those are very difficult moral situations, but I don't
Yeah.
want to just go over them like that. Maybe we could meet in a few weeks or maybe a few months and
Sure.
then had that
Yep.
conversation. That would be really something. uh Especially because I feel like a lot of modern people from I think we might be a similar generation. I'm 1988. I don't know what year you were born.
84.
Oh, so we pretty much the same generation.
Pretty
And I
much the
feel like
same. Yeah.
us, we have a hard time making moral choices. With troubled generation. And yeah, so definitely something to talk about. That was wonderful conversation. I love all the insights from psychology, from your life experiences. Um, and yeah, I'm so blessed to have colleagues like that in my program in school.
Well,
So
thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it. I'm grateful for what you do, and your work out there in New York, and keep up the good work and keep preaching the gospel in the way we can.
thank you. And if you ever on Long Island, New York, it's a beautiful place. I invite all my guests to come visit me. I live here on Long Island. There's a lot of beautiful places to see. We have nice beaches. We have uh, very, very nice stuff to enjoy here. So whenever you're
I've
here,
actually
just
I lived in New York City for a few months, and I went up to Montauk. Now
oh, did you?
this was a long time ago. This is back probably 12, 14 years ago at least. Well, even more than that, almost 20 years at this point. But yeah, it's a neat area, so I appreciate the invitation. If I ever am, I'll make my way out. So
Yeah, so I also lead a men's group here on Long Island. So if you'll be around, I would definitely want to have you as a guest and speaker. I think the
sounds
guys
good.
would be thrilled to talk to you. So thank you very much. If anybody from listeners have any requests, our email is Long Island Catholic Apologetics, gmail.com. And thank you for this time with us, and see you next time.
All right, thanks a lot. God bless you. You take care.